Constructive critique has as a goal to improve something that you already like. Destroying something is no improvement. In the same manner, I'm now criticizing in this video how I get the impression that in the European Union, the preferred migrant is illegal, violent, and stupid, while the most offensive migrant is someone arriving legal with postgraduate qualifications that learns the official language of the country and wants to work. With Exhibit A, me. That's egocentric because it's not about you. But library research is easy, and I'm only one of many similar cases of legal migrants having the same problems, even French nationals. Just I can't talk in their name but in mine. I immigrated from Germany into France permanently in November 2002. That makes 18 years being an immigrant in France. Unfortunately, the Aboriginal France moved away as soon as I arrived, but I don't take it personally. The capital of France is Paris, but the buildings of Paris, France, especially in the center, belong to Qatar, and the French soccer team to the United Arab Emirates. Well, they couldn't sell the US embassy to Qatar, and if it wasn't for Qatar, Paris would belong to communist-occupied China. In 2002, there was still an obligation to demand a visa in France for all non-French nationals, la carte de séjour. In 2006, the law came out, which was readapted to the changes between the original European Union Treaty and the 2007 version of Lisbon. Of course, contrary to other European countries, we had in France a vote by the people, and as the French said to these changes with an overwhelming majority no, the president at the time, Sarkozy, concluded that this actually meant a yes, because no to a specific change of the European Union Treaty is portrayed as being against any kind of European Union, like before World War II under German hegemony. Now it's different. Like the proposition who has to and will be the next president by the industrial media complex in the US elections in 2016, only more successful. However, before and after the Treaty of Lisbon, the French law stated that everyone who has a passport from one of the 28 EU states or Switzerland is allowed to stay in France, and states precisely that therefore the formal obligation to get a visa for Europe is not necessary for Europeans. And therefore I was told in writing in 2016 to leave the French territory because I'm European, or to get a visa for Europe with my European passport. This did make sense, including to the police, which is the authority to issue passports and visas in France. As a worldwide common, police officers are civil servants, and each day in something called Préfecture de la Police, around 20 officers have to handle 500 cases each day, something like that in that dimension anyway. I was there. Not all 20 police officers. 5 have to issue a preliminary application with all 500 candidates for the actual applications, which is on the same day in the same building done by 2 other officers. The remaining officers are switching between reception desk, typing the preliminary application into the computer system, and carrying hard copy from one room to the next, and issue driving licenses, not to the migrants, that are other people. A system that Uderzo very realistic painted in Asterix Conquers Rome. So I first have to wait in line at the reception desk to make a demand for waiting in line of the preliminary application. Then I have to convince a police officer to accept my demand for an European visa as European citizen, despite the law stating that I don't need one. Luckily, many French banks don't like the Portuguese and refuses them to open an account without a visa for Europe additional to a European passport, which was common knowledge in the Préfecture de la Police, so they weren't too shocked. For Americans, this is like being ordered to apply for a green card in New Jersey with an American passport issued in Texas. Then, after the successful preliminary registration, I got a permit to get again in line at the reception desk, which gave me the permit to stay in line for the registration. If you arrived early and there are still a few hours left before the end of the working day, you can do the first registration desk line and preliminary registration line, and the second registration desk line for being admitted to wait in the application line at the same day, and try to excuse the preliminary application issuing officer because Why did you get an allowance to ask for a document the law doesn't demand? But the state does, by making your case. Meanwhile, each officer had a totally different person from a totally different continent, probably not speaking French every 36 seconds for 5 hours. Which makes everybody calm and relaxed, happy to get something totally different and nonsensical. What you also can do is to lose your social security number, learn Arabic, and come as refugee back to your birth country, Germany. As this process was considered to use too much personnel, the French government decided to do the same system with half of the civil servants, but the same system. We are surprised that it became twice as efficient. Remember, France is the country people eat snails and garlic sauce out of their shell. With the social security comes the issue that makes the difference in my case. Originally, when I immigrated, I followed procedure to register in the registration office. All lines. Turns out, everyone who followed the law got rewarded by invalidating the driver's license after a year and losing social security number, in theory only deactivated just forever, of the European country he's been born. In order to apply for a job, I had to find an employer keen to do the paperwork to create a French social security number, which do some employers that have jobs usually given to illegals. First off, I had to accept some jobs as an illegal, hiding to be legal, to calm employers like, nothing suspicious, he really is an illegal, and actually I'm legal, but still the same person. So for me, kitchen service before applying for an audition at an orchestra. I was at the time a violinist and joined the orchestra at the Opéra Comique de Paris. Though France demands diplomas for teaching music in the institutions, which is called on the side of the European Union no diploma necessary, orchestras only demand to play well in an audition for any orchestra because better able than qualified. I have 2 postgraduate degrees, not only as a violinist but also as music teacher and in composition, up to the highest degree possible in classical music in Germany. That's called Meisterklasse. As the names of diplomas are confusing, for example, Germany issues in each Bundesland their own diploma, which is to secure quality then nationally synchronized. While France has no Bundesland, and instead of national coordination, the diplomas are nationally issued. But if the university is called École Normale Supérieure Nationale of something, and the other is called Conservatoire Supérieur National of something, afterwards, French employers don't accept either the one or the other, like not recognizing MIT as there is no U for university. To calm confusion, there are laws that state those diplomas being equal, which I ignored, especially when one country is not from planet France.
To all scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, responsible citizens who were disappointed by the decision of the President of the United States, I want to say that they will find in France a second homeland.
The main country of planet France is Paris, with 96 foreign countries called Département de la France, and planet France is circled by 4 moons called Département Outre-mer. Europe seems to be in the same solar system. There are some meteorites called former colonies, and then there are extraterrestrials, for example, Chinese, Americans, and Klingons. France and Germany compared their diplomas since the 70th officially. For example, instead of the freshman program, the final school exam is something like high school and freshman combined in European school systems, called Abitur, Matura, or Baccalaureate. Depending on the country, students can enter directly university in their specialized studies afterwards. As trade-off, there is no crossover in majors in university possible, and much more voluntary dropouts. Education is for free, and if it wasn't, European banks don't do loans to students. Starting immediately fees for education would maybe force the unresponsible students for more responsibility. Sure, that's good. Schools would, out of tradition, keep not to care about trivialities like access to a job, but hope for bailouts by government, like banks do. short, without forcing all parties, at the same time, step by step, to adapt in transition towards a goal. Directly to introduce education as a product that someone has to produce, including to assure their students to learn content, not only getting context, so that the other can buy education. The already in my video Subistan described degeneration of the school system would add more money for by academic interest cultivated teachers. At least at the moment, students can, besides covering the obligations in university, clandestine learn by themselves in order to, besides having a maybe recognized diploma, also useful knowledge. Knowledge nobody in the higher bubbles cares about, as they confuse plundering by members of an economic aristocracy with capitalism. The Lisbon Treaty starts with calling Europe a social union, and socialists think in distributing differently, more just money, while capitalists seek to create stuff by letting participate everyone. But stealing is quicker and less effort, so let's imagine we do capitalism, and it has to be. Of course, if you fire all teachers, you can transfer university to communist-occupied China, and surely no radical Islamist would step in to fill the educational vacuum. Back to 2002, when I arrived in France. I also sent from day one my diplomas to the French Office for European Recognition of Diplomas, called ENIC-NARIC, and it took them only short and brief 11 years to issue a document, which stated after a deep investigation of 142 months, this is what my diplomas in Germany are. No mention what this means for France. As I didn't know that meanwhile a decision of the Conseil d'État, something like the Supreme Court for France, confirmed in an exact equal case like mine that the laws valid and revalidated since 50 years are valid. Thank you, Captain Obvious, which meant to enigmatic. Back to me after a year kitchen service to get a social security number when I was playing the violin in the orchestra opera comique. Having a gig as a concertmaster, a few years later, on my way home, I had a stroke. Thank you very much. Don't worry, actually, all accidents at work, including the ride home, are considered work accidents by law. And in Europe, by law means in theory. If the European law is broken, they counter as excuse that it's the fault of the European law because they can't imagine that you can read. Why did you sleep at work and fuck that up? You made me do it. In reality, I was taught the opposite for over a year. Then, after I quote the laws published on the internet, the reason to deny any claim switched to, sorry, too late. Now you should start to understand why the social security number is crucial for me. In France, you are not allowed to buy prescription drugs out of your pocket with a medical prescription, since President Hollande prescribing rare medication too often leads to the loss of the medical license for the doctor. But without coverage, you can't get any prescription, upholding the illusion of an actual universal healthcare instead of admitting that we have in France an amazing basic healthcare for everyone. You can upgrade with an additional private plan called Mutual, but in order to apply for hospitals called Sector 2, there's a huge gap in between. Is nothing. I tried, as I didn't lose intellect, to apply for jobs using my qualifications and abilities. On the French right, that's stealing jobs from the French. Creating jobs by hiring capable people is unheard of. The French left, it's called showing off to shame others. In case you forgot, there was a Supreme Court of Conseil d'État decision that those laws apply that are already written and validated laws as they are laws. It explains everything if existing laws, which became laws when the Supreme Court attested them to be constitutional and valid in the first place 15 years ago, need a confirmation 50 years later again. I hope this wouldn't need to be for murder. After all, according to Justice Minister Mrs. Nicole Belloubet, smoking marijuana doesn't allow murder of human beings. I agree, which she said to justify why Mr. Trauer got free after he tortured to death his 80-year-old Jewish neighbor, Mrs. Halimi, because he had had a joint the same day. Don't murder humans, but it's different with Jews in order to show tolerance to another group, actually only to the radicals. That's no visual regime story of World War II. The murder happened a week before the presidential election, and reporting was forbidden to avoid influencing voters in April 2017. Back to my post-stroke job search. Employers, including the state, the city of Paris, or the Secretariat of Versailles wrote me letters that those laws that now suddenly after 50 years decided to be really laws mean to them. Nevertheless, I found a job in car sales quite amusing for an epileptic, and I was happy to have something to do, work, not because that's my dream job, which would be how I can integrate myself the most efficient into society and society could optimal profit from me, which is good for self-esteem. But because I can do more than watching the ceiling of my flat, I received in that time the official letter that contrary to European law, French law, and German law, I have to leave France if I don't get a visa for Europe because of, not despite, because of I'm a European citizen. As another law guarantees after 5 years permanent residence to get a permanent visa for Europeans, as France is Europe, but not planet France. I got a limited visa for 5 years with stating not active because I had a job. There's a 5 in here and the word active. Any question to any officials, and I got forwarded upstairs until the European Department for solving cases in which European laws aren't upheld. The department has the incredible clever name Solve It, not kidding. So I wrote that what happened, which was the exact European directive that wasn't respected, and by which French law this directive was adopted with number and everything, and as bonus the German law also. So the law here says this should happen. That's what happened. As answer, they told me that they are not a legal counsel, but if I think the department solve it, are not acting as they should, I could appeal by writing to them, the same department. Got it? You can complain about a wrong decision to the persons that issued that decision, hoping they decide to pressure themselves. I could also, in theory, pardon me by law, apply for the French citizenship, but private citizens can put that on hold by a slap suit filing bogus criminal charges. I explained the idea is to avoid an awkward situation that in the day a new citizenship arrives by mail when the applicant starts his first day in prison as serial killer because he filed for naturalization during the trial and can't get sent back to wherever he came from. To avoid this, as soon as charges are filed and accepted for judicial prosecution, you can't apply for citizenship. Let's say a person, we call him A, B, files criminal charges for assault against you because you strangled him with your paralyzed arm after your 3-month-old puppy ate him completely. So that from the strangling with the paralyzed arm after the puppy swallowed his tiny 220 pounds after over 5'9" body, AB had 6 hours later an asthmatic, with witnesses that swear to have been watching from 3 different angles at the time each. 3 locations, that's talent. By the way, that was a real case in which I was cited to criminal court but found non-guilty because of inconsistency to logic of the charges. But it took 3 years. But don't wait there, as my accuser had a big medical file about his injuries, which stated that I had broken bones, arguing I hit myself, which proves, well, there the judges had a problem that I, as the perpetrator, had the defensive wounds and the victim nothing, and reported as his injuries mine. Still, he got appeal, and I got a second non-guilty judgment after an additional year later being blocked for naturalization. Don't worry, the accuser was persecuted for lying to court and got after 5 non-appearances, which means another 5 years for 5 postponed hearings, nothing. Now, my fault was that I didn't show up to an incredible gifted medical examiner of his choice that 2 years after the fact made his examination without ever inviting me for an examination. Never seeing me, no idea that my spastic paralyzed arm automatically clinches in front of my face, being with the elbow in the way of an iron chain I was whipped with, unimportant detail. This costed me altogether 7,000 euros legal fees, approximately, and blocked me for citizenship over 8 years, as well as any employment as a teacher, as I was somebody accused of training puppies to swallow 5'9" tall, 220 pounds little poor immigrant boys. And immigrant means that the accuser was second generation French citizen, but Muslim minority, Well, I must have a white privilege or something as a cripple immigrated from Germany, belonging to a 0.3% of the French population. That's a majority on opposite day. He had to tell me about his adoration for the Holocaust, painting swastikas as defense to my Zog white Jewish supremacy, though I was warned to get arrested for racism if I would call that a motive. To see the system behind those slap suits. Before that, I received somewhat around 2009 a letter that without my knowledge I had been in jail, and after time served without being there, I should additionally pay a fine. I appealed and was very interested what I had been accused and condemned of. Criminal charges had been filed for telepathically inciting crime against myself, date from an incident a few years ago when I was mugged. Yep, you heard right. I induced by my supernatural powers of thought the irresistible urge in a mugger's brain to take my wallet. And my thought power was so specific that the witness could describe the exact content of my wallet down to the IKEA family card. In the appeal, which was the first audience for me, it sufficed to read the testimony. Short verdict non guilty, but now I understood why job search had been so weird. Hi, I want a job. You see me here, but actually I'm in jail. It's only that we both are delusional. So, without the status of potentially can be judged guilty, I was in the beginning of 2011 and in 2020. There are exceptional cases of people getting French citizenship. Other by law possible argument to give the citizenship would be if you participate in an international competition and win the first prize for France. Let's say an international competition in Norway for a symphony. I did that. In this case, you get a letter, leave France because you are European. And the offered solution for neither European nor French laws applied is then leaving the European Union, that then only not applying French laws is committed instead of not applying French and European laws to solve half of the problem. Which changes for legal immigrants? Nothing. Because it's not important in whose name someone pretends to do, but important not to do.